Hello everybody, it's Rootbeer, and I'm here with a deck profile for Avantgardia. I meant to do this like a week ago when I got back from locals, and then I didn't do it because I am lazy. Let's get into it, shall we? So, Avantgardia is a new ride line that was introduced in Set 9 recently, as of this recording. And, I was like vaguely interested in it. I was already going to get like Brantgate stuff just because I wanted the new Welstra stuff because that looked like it was going to be good. And then, of course, me being me, I decided, why would I play a good deck when I could do this instead? So, here's the deck profile. Of course, for our ride line, we have Sora Period, because we have to. We have the grade 1, which is when you ride on top of it with the grade 2, you can, and if you have Sora Period in your soul, you can search for a grade 1 strategy card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and if you did not reveal a card, you can call it to Rearguard Circle. The grade 2 does the same thing, but for the grade 2 order, and then we have Avantgardia itself, where if your soul has Sora Period, you can put a strategy order into your soul, draw a card, until end of turn, it gets 5k and red text. At the end of the battle, it attacks. If it hit, or if you Persona Road, you can counterblast, discard one, stand it, and it gets drive -1. So, this is kind of inheriting the Blau play style, where it's just like a restanding Vanguard. And then, it's got like the on-hit, or if you Persona Ride clause, so of course we gotta play 4 copies of it, because Persona Riding is very important. For the main deck, where you're going to be playing I'm not gonna try and pronounce it, but this guy. So on play, you counterblast, Soul Blast, search your deck for a grade 3 order, reveal, search deck or drop, very important. Put it into your hand, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck, and then when you put a set order into your order zone, it gets 5k, so drink, and it's an 18k beater. We have Operate Master Freyheit, so on play, if your order zone has a set order, you can counterblast 1, discard a card, search your deck for 1 card with the same name as your Vanguard, and we can stop reading now because everything else is irrelevant to Avantgardia. So, like I said with the red text, if you hit or if you Persona Ride, you get the restand. So, of course, this is one of those cards that you don't really want to play it, but it says search for a copy of your Vanguard, so you have to, just because it makes Avantgardia function. This is one of those cards where I've seen Japanese lists go anywhere from like 2 to 4 copies. As of right now, I don't feel very good playing like less than 3. Like, I'd be willing to go down to 3 personally, but for now I was running 4 just because I'm like, I want to see this card as often as possible. I want to always have my Persona Ride. It's a disaster if you don't Persona Ride, both for the power loss and just trying to be like, please let my Vanguard hit. But, if they ever made a more, like, Avantgardia targeted version of this effect, you absolutely would replace this. Next, we have Enlightened Age Dragon. So, this is the Persona Ride cycle card. That seems to be what they're calling all of them these days, so I'm just gonna call it that too. So, it has an act ability. If you Persona Road, you can counterblast 1, discard, it gets 5k, drink, and then choose an order from your drop zone, put it into your hand, then choose a set order with a different name from the one you added previously and put it in your hand. So, the way Avantgardia works is that you're constantly putting your strategy orders into your soul, and then afterwards, either with this or with the grade 3, you can Soul Blast the orders out, which means you can then bring those spent orders that you had put into your soul back, and then you can play them again, which is why I'm running 4 of this. This is another card that I feel like I'd be willing to cut to maybe like 2 or 3 copies, just because it doesn't do anything on your first grade 3 turn if you didn't Persona Ride. And then it's just like an easy target for your opponent to get rid of because, the grade 3 and Freyheit both only work on play. Freyheit is like extra vanilla. This is at least an 18k beater, right? So your opponent's gonna like read one of these, and then they're gonna read Enlightened Age, and they're gonna, even if they don't know what Avantgardia does, they're just gonna get 2 set orders from your drop zone and think, they wouldn't be playing this if it wasn't important, and then they're gonna get rid of it. So, You know, it's one of those cards where it's like, it does something important, but it does it late because you have to Persona ride, and if you play it earlier in the game, then it's just prime target for removal, so it's kind of in a weird place. This is one of those, because you don't really have much better, although I do actually like it. You know, I think I used it a lot when I was playing at my locals, so I do like it, but it's also very replaceable. Next we have Dragon Tree Wretch. I'm not reading that. So it has the Dragon Tree thing where you can put a Dragon Tree marker, but the important thing is when you play a set order from your hand, is you can counterblast one, check your top 5, choose something with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, call it to rear in the same column, and shuffle. So this is just advantage. As of right now, like, the tall targets are kind of, like, weird just because grade 3 and Freyheit are both pretty nice hits for it, but also Freyheit you only want to see if you're on Avantgardia, otherwise you're just looking at, like, cards you only play one of, and that kind of sucks. So I'm only playing 2 right now, partially just for, like, deck space, and partially because it's like, you know, right now there aren't great targets for it. It's also just a lot of counterblast, because, you know, this guy has to counterblast Soul Blast, Freyheit has to counterblast. Enlightened Age is a Soul Blast, but again, it only works when you Persona ride, and often by that point, your board is already populated, or you have a decently sized hand. So, this card is nice. Like, if I were to cut copies of Enlightened Age or Freyheit, I'd probably play more of the Dragon Tree Wretch. It's a pretty good card. It's probably being cut once we moved into set 10 and we get the guy that, like, draws a card and countercharges. And, of course, we have 4 copies of Bulbul Mine, because Bulbul Mine. You don't need the soul very much, you get plenty of it just by soul charging your strategy cards, but you do go through quite a few counterblasts. Obviously, Avantgardia himself, Freyheit and the grade 3 are also both counterblasts. I have found myself wanting Bulbul Mine in many situations. A nice thing you could do is, like, if you activate the Wretch in the main phase, you know, you call something, populate your board, and then you can activate Bulbul Mine later. It also means if your opponent damage denies you, but you want to resolve, like, Freyheit or the grade 3 to get all the cards you need, you can still have counterblast available when you go for Avantgardia. And of course we have Perfect Guards, so 3 regular Perfect Guards, 1 Sanctitude. When I brought it to my locals, I didn't have the Sanctitude because it's in my Nova Grappler deck and I'm lazy. For triggers, I'm going with the pretty standard, like 7 crit, over trigger, 4 draw, 4 heal. I might be willing to drop the draws to 3 or maybe even play fronts. The deck doesn't get a ton of card advantage. You have ways of getting cards into your hand, but it's oftentimes like orders or copies of Avantgardia, so the draw triggers are nice to just go that little bit deeper and get effective shield, you know? But I wouldn't be opposed to just running front triggers instead. For the orders, we are playing 1 copy of Kill Shroud. I didn't find myself needing to use this card very often. Never really felt correct. It's just like, you can get it with the grade 1, it thins your deck out a bit, and yeah, sometimes just having that 1 order is relevant because the game went long and you just ran out of other things you could do. And then we're playing 2 of the other orders. I think 2 is a pretty safe ratio for either of them. It's one of those things where if you draw it early, you don't feel too bad discarding them, especially because we have Enlightened Age to bring it back, but also, you know, I think by the time you're at grade 3, you mostly want to use the grade 3 order to give your whole front row power. For the grade 2 order, it gives your Vanguard 10k and your opponent can't intercept or play blitz orders, which is really nice. And it seems to be for the whole turn, so that means, like, they can't intercept against any rear guards or play any blitz orders at all, if I'm reading this correctly, which is very good. If you know for a fact your opponent has Sanctitude, then that just completely shuts that down for the whole turn, which could be lethal. And otherwise, it just gets Avantgardia to 23k on that first grade 3 turn where you really want him to hit. So it's one of those things, either they have to drop a bunch of guards or a PG early, or they just take the hit and you get the restand. And, you know, if they didn't guard the first one, it's very unlikely they're able to guard the second one. So that's going to be it for this deck profile. I like Avantgardia, but I'll admit, this deck list is one that I'm perfectly willing to change. I think there are a lot of other options you could go into, and I'm pretty open to, like, other things. It's just, this is kind of what my first draft settled on, and it did okay at my locals. I did make an alternate list with just, like, other tech options, so we have this grade 2 that's, like, Soul Blast 2, grab a grade 2 strategy from drop. So that's pretty nice because, unlike Enlightened Age, it works right away. It can only grab the grade 2 order, but that's still pretty good, you know, it makes your Vanguard very big, and like I said, if you know your opponent has Sanctitude, then that's something that just hard counters that. So I'd probably replace, like, some copies of Enlightened Age for this if I were to make that swap. I saw a lot of Japanese lists before they got all the various promos playing this card, which is just like Soul Blast 1, draw discard, and then if you have a set order, it gets 5k, so it's just a 15k beater that can cycle your hand. You know, that's fine. I'm not in love with that one. I think I'd rather get the utility from Enlightened Age, even if it's delayed. Or, you know, the power of... I'm not reading that. This is the grade 1, which is Soul Blast 1, discard a card. You can grab a grade 1 strategy order. I included that because it's a blue Death Stir, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I feel like you don't go for this one. Kill Shroud just didn't come up enough. You know, the retire on Kill Shroud is nice, and it's one of those similar to Michu, where there are times where I just want to have the removal, and it'd be really nice if I could have it all the time, but it only gives 5k, which is just not enough. It's really only if your opponent committed something that you know is important and you want to get rid of it, or you just, like, really didn't have anything else to do anymore. So, I don't think this is super relevant, but I'm putting it here as a tech option, just like, you know, maybe. And, of course, there's this guy, the Megra Grogro, where, on boost, excuse me, when the attack this unit boosted hits, you can countercharge 1, so the budget version of Bulbul Mine. I think between Bulbul Mine itself, if you have it, and the blue Death Stir card that gets introduced in set 10, this is going to be replaced, but for now, if you don't have a Bulbul Mine, this is a budget option. And of course we have the Grail, because Persona Ride. I'm not a fan of the Grail personally. When I was playing the deck, I feel like I did want to use various different orders, like, I want to be able to play the grade 3 order, or maybe I want to play, like, additional orders just to have it set up for future turns, and, you know, having the Grail, it's like, okay, you know, getting the Persona Ride is important, but also, if I don't have a strategy order, or the strategy order I have is bad, then does it really matter if you Persona Road? Because you still need to eat the strategy order for Avantgardia to get the restand ability to begin with. So if you just don't have anything in your order zone, the Grail conflicts with it. And if you have something suboptimal, like Kill Shroud, it's like, okay, you guaranteed the restand, but then it's going to be a really weak turn. So, I'm, like, not a huge fan of the Grail. I've seen some lists with it, I've seen some lists without it. I feel like you could probably, like, cut a Bulbul Mine to add it into your order lineup or something. Like, you could probably cut any of the main deck cards for a copy of the Grail. I just personally don't really like it. So yeah, that's the list for now. I feel like I'm pretty open to changing this. I want to have more copies of the Dragon Tree Wretch. I'm just trying to figure out, like, where the chaff would be. I might experiment with splitting, like, 2 of the grade 2 Death Stir and 2 of Enlightened Age as well, just so I could have this card early on. I don't have to feel too bad about discarding my grade 2 strategy order, because I could, like, discard it for my ride line, Soul Blast 2, bring it back, and then play it. You know, and that's something to do early, and then I don't have to care about it sticking on the board as something my opponent wants to retire. Might also try to do like a 3-3 split of Bulbul Mine and the Dragon Tree Wretch. I'm not sure yet. I think this deck is pretty open-ended because Avantgardia kind of does everything on its own, being a restander, so the rest of the deck is just, you know, strategy consistency and, you know, finding your persona rides and then just trying to, like, augment with either generic cards that, like, have a bit of power and utility or, like, more strategy cycling. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.